We'd like to begin by welcoming you, Anais. Thank you so much for taking out the time to sort of get to this platform, share your thoughts, and have this interaction with us.
Hi, Megha, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's such a pleasure being here.
We would just like to start by asking you a little bit about your background and how important architecture means for you.
My name is Anais, and I'm a French and UK qualified architect. I founded Daab Design Architects, which is based in London, UK, about 10 years ago, after practicing in France, in Germany, studying in Italy, so having quite a varied background. And I worked in large practices, medium practices, small practices, and now the practice I'm a co-director of is a small practice. And architecture has been with me all my life, so it's very important to me. But I would say architects are people that I'm really interested in as well. And we're about to talk about the well-being of architects. And I've experienced a lot of different things, a lot of different culture in studios. And I feel now that it's time to share what I've seen and what I've experienced.
What does a healthy workspace look like for you? I know we've been talking a lot of mental health between the two of us, but if we were to just talk about a healthy workspace, what does that look like to you?
I'm conscious that I'm talking from a very privileged point of view because our practice is a small practice, and it's much easier, I feel, to develop a connection between people and to develop a very human-centered way of working in a small practice, because we know each other quite well, because we inevitably interact with each other on a daily basis. And I think this is the basis for a healthy workspace. It is all about, it's actually very simple and actually quite hard to achieve, but it is exactly the same as a happy and healthy human. It's the same thing. I like this the pyramid of Maslow, you know, the basic needs and what motivates a human. And I think a healthy workspace should address all of these needs. This is the way my partner and I, Dennis and I, direct Daab Design. And this is what I feel every architect should be entitled to find when walking into a new office. So addressing, and I've got it in front of me so I don't forget, but addressing the physiological needs, safety, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. If all of these needs are not addressed, the practice and the workspace is not complete. And it starts with very simple things such as just physical well-being. It's also a feeling of safety, safety with a contract, but also physically. Belonging, being part of an environment. And to me, that goes also with what the contract reflects. So there's a contract, there's two people agreeing on something, and this contract has to be respected. Esteem, of course, achieving your goals and feeling self-esteem, and self-actualization, ultimately, really being where you want, doing what you want, and having much more to discover.
If there was any significant moment or an instance which made you sort of proactively talk about mental well-being or look out for this aspect in your design firm, your studio, your workspace, if there's anything you'd like to share with us.
It's very personal. Of course, it's my personal perspective. And when I started more than 25 years ago, I think mental health, the word mental health was stigmatized, heavily stigmatized. You would immediately address it, associate it with a treatment. So somebody who had problems or who had to be repaired in a way. What I like is about today, about the generation coming and questioning things and talking more openly about things, is that the term is not anymore mental health, but mental well-being or mental fitness. And I like these words, which have a connotation of simplicity, of proximity, accessibility, but also of a routine, of something that is a matter of an everyday routine. And it's more preventive than reparative, or so it is something that actually concerns everyone. Everyone has to look after themselves as much as physical fitness, mental health has to be addressed on a daily basis. Personally, what made me think about it is starting my practice. And now that I reflect back on it, and it's been 10 years, so I can really think about it, I realized that it was a year after my son was born, and I had to deal with very heavy discrimination. And it was a very difficult moment as well, because as a young mother, I felt quite vulnerable. You are physically and mentally quite vulnerable when you've done something so big, I feel. I couldn't cope with dealing with this discrimination and at the same time fighting for my position or do the thing that I had been used to do for 15 years before that. And I had a miscarriage. And I think that was the rock bottom that really actually propelled me to all of this positive energy to want to start a practice, but to want to start it on my terms and make sure that in our office, in our practice, this would not happen, and say, okay, I cannot change the system. Well, this is the way I felt, but I'm hoping that today people can feel that they can change the system. At the time, I felt I couldn't change the system, but I could create my system, and maybe that would change something at some stage.
There are so many struggles that one has to sort of deal with and overcome. Getting personal and sort of sharing your story, I hope this is sort of an inspiring sort of story for whoever's listening in. And
Yeah, I hope it is. I hope it is inspiring too, because in fact, when I reflect back, that was not necessary. I didn't have to go through that to be able to find a place where I could work happily and where things were more human. But unfortunately, I had to be shaken like that because I had been formatted to the environment, which was extremely competitive, um, hard. I met some extraordinary people along the way, very human people who really taught me something. I also ended up in some toxic environments where it was extremely hard to do things differently.
it can get a little intimidating to approach the topic of well-being, mental well-being in one's workspace, because I don't feel there is enough conversation happening. It's not just me, it's actually the statistics also that sort of back up what I'm trying to say here. And I think you might agree. So I just want to understand from you, who's been there at a younger stage, and now when you're sitting on the employer side, how do you think one can approach this conversation from both the sides?
I think there's two things, or even more. I mean, it's a complicated topic. I think for someone who is struggling with mental health at the moment, the hardest thing is to realize that you are struggling with mental health, and this is when you are in the middle of it, and it's the hardest thing, and it's the hardest thing to realize that deep inside you have a desire to get out of that, and once this desire is expressed, it's half of the problem overcome, because there are so many tools around today. The neuroscience progresses so quickly. There are so many things available to heal quite rapidly. Once this awareness is present and the desire to get out of the trouble is present, I think it's easier. But how do you realize that you're experiencing mental health problem? Well, my point of view today is that it's a bit radical, but no negative thought is beneficial. No stress is beneficial, contrary to what some people say. A little bit of stress is good. No, I think no stress is beneficial. No negative thought, no adrenaline rush because you're worried about something, or no fear is beneficial. And I think eradicating these fears and this stress is part of the mental fitness we're talking about. If that can help, someone realizing that they are experiencing mental health problem, I think this is my point. Now, opening up on it is difficult. It's probably easier to open up on what we are talking about on a fitness basis, so sharing tips, or very simple things have a huge impact in terms of mental well-being. A walk has huge benefits. Breathing, getting out of the office, or a discussion with someone on a different topic as well is very, very positive. So again, we're going back to establishing a human contact with someone and feeling safe enough to share things.
Since you spoke about stress, I would like to take our conversation to one thing that probably most architects take pride in and also identify with, which is long hours of work, also less gratification. Uh, Actually, there's no gratification when one starts. It takes a long time to build up and get to that place where you feel like you've achieved something, or you've been respected for the work that you've put in, and that can be in terms of anything. So I just also want to understand if that was something that you also dealt with when you talk about long hours of work or a stressful lifestyle. How do you feel that is something that maybe the employers can work on?
I think it's a huge problem in architecture, and it's not. I think. I mean, it's obviously a huge problem in architecture because there's been a culture of long hours for so many years. I think in any creative process, there is something which is that the more you do, the more you draw, the more ideas start flowing. And you have to be very self-disciplined to realize that it shouldn't be at the expense of the health of other people. Yes, I've experienced long hours like everyone. I think one of my first job, I didn't even have the time to clean my flat. I didn't have the time to do anything, to have any social life, and it was dreadful. There are many contributing factors to that. I think the architecture industry doesn't respect its work enough and always want to impress more. And you wonder sometimes if it's on an ego basis, or why some architects are wanting to have presentation which are just 10 times what you need. I think there's not enough respect of a simple idea and sharing an idea. And I met one of the great boss I had, Mike, impressed me very much. And I had really a eureka moment when, after a long session, we realized that we found a great idea together, but the presentation was not there. We had almost nothing. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna stay all night here trying to do an InDesign presentation or something. And he said, no, you're going home. We've got a pretty good presentation. I was like, what? He said, well, the idea is brilliant. Let's just do that. And he could have done like many architects say, yeah, let's do that. A bit of Photoshop here, a bit of InDesign, and then it ends up in a night of work. But no, the value of the idea was so good that he thought there's no need for more. What I've learned from him is to try to put the ego aside. Yes, it feels great to arrive in a meeting with like a huge presentation and have the client say, wow. It's not the goal we have. The goal is to listen to the client and address their needs. They're flattered. They like to see a bit of glossy images and things. But I think the most important is to show them that we've listened to them. We've responded. And look, we found this idea. And yes, it feels uncomfortable sometimes to show a bare sketch, but this is the best thing I could do. And no one lost sleep over that. And that's good for everyone. I think that was for me the best learning, trying to be real about our work. I often compare, and people often compare architects and lawyers. I mean, and some people like to laugh about the fact that architects and lawyers do the same type of work, except lawyers get paid and not architects. Very funny. I've stopped laughing about these jokes when I hear them, because I find them actually really very sad. And a lawyer respects when he's found a conclusion. He respects the brilliance of his idea, and we should do the same with our ideas. They are good enough. They don't need a lot of flashes and stress and stuff around. So I think that's one aspect of reducing hours, a very easy way of reducing the amount of hour, gaining confidence in what we're presenting and what we do.
The lawyer and architect comparison, my bad. And that joke is just universal because I have heard that so many times and it's insulting after a point. So I completely
Yes.
agree with you. A lot of employer side information. I just want to also quickly touch upon the college and the educational aspect of architecture. So I think the long hours, presentation, and the pressure of making the presentation outstanding, regardless of whatever the concept is, right? That comes from or originates from our architectural colleges, where we spend nights in the studios trying to impress our juries in our thesis presentation. Do you feel there is anything that the colleges can do when it comes to sort of leading a movement about opening up conversations of mental well-being at workspaces, or educating their students to feel less guilty about leaving for work for home from work on time, uh, thinking more on the conceptual side, like how you mentioned about your mentor?
There's plenty of things we could talk about in your question, but there's one aspect which I find really interesting today, which is the discoveries science makes on how the creative brain works. And this is absolutely fascinating. We know now that the creative brain, which is the right brain, has an unlimited amount of resources, and that the capacity to connect dots, to tap into anything you've seen, you've read, you've you've seen in architecture or in your travels or etc., or getting inspiration, memory. That the potential of the right brain, the creative brain, is unlimited, and that it needs to be nurtured. I think what we know now is that this side of the brain is far more capable than the hyper rational side of the brain, which is the left brain, which is generally triggered and gets working under stress, under a fear, anything that actually triggers the survival mode. And this part of the brain delivers under adrenaline and under the survival mode. It does deliver things. And yes, we get our job done and the assignment done, etc. But we extremely stress. We probably experience some mental health, doubt, self-doubt, low self-esteem, etc. But on top of that, it is far more limited than the right side of the brain, which means that the ideas can be okay, can be ticking the boxes, but they will not be really great. If colleges could educate students to that and teach them how to unlock the right side of the brain, which apparently is linked more to the senses, so sensation, what you hear, what you see, what you feel. So that's the reason why a walk, a break and a walk brings you ideas, and you can solve problems while you walk, because you are releasing more, you are in contact with your sensation rather than your fears and your over rationalized part of the brain. This is fascinating, and this is completely revolutionary. It benefits everyone. Basically, working in a better environment or knowing how your right side of the brain works can release your brilliant ideas, can make you a better architect with less effort, less stress, less hours. This is fantastic, and I think colleges should have a module on that.
These institutions can also probably encourage some policies which the colleges can implement and ensure that um, the practice is being followed through and through.
When it needs to be an implemented policy, it's almost as if you've lost touch with the human side of it. They would be great at raising awareness and helping students and young architects see through practices and which practice to choose and what to look for when they look for a practice. And, avoiding that, avoiding fueling the system. So raising awareness against these dynamics, these very toxic dynamics that happen in some practices.
I would just like to thank you for opening up this conversation, which is a much needed sort of conversation that needs to happen, not just in colleges, but also in our profession and within the architectural community. So thank you for being so vulnerable, so open, and completely going deep into every aspect that we could have touched probably.
Thank you very much, Megha. It was a pleasure to be here with you and discuss this.
Yes, and I hope that all our listeners, all our audience, they've really gotten important takeaways from the conversation. And we hope to have more of these conversations presented through our platform. So thank you, Anais. And we hope to have this conversation running in the industry.
Yes, anytime, Megha. Thank you.
Thank you.